Okay, we're live.
Cool. Very good. So what did you guys think of the case this week? It was interesting because I was like in high school during that time period, but I don't remember any of it. I don't really follow hockey, I guess, but
yeah, I'm not a hockey guy either. So yeah,
I remember
this is why nobody watches hockey. This is why no one watches hockey, right?
Yeah. I know the NBA had like the same kind of issue around the same time, I think, in high school, if I remember right. But yeah, I don't remember anything about the hockey lockout.
Yeah, because there was a basketball one, right?
Yeah.
See, that shows you. The only one I'm aware of is like baseball and football. I don't keep a track of the other stuff.
Yeah, the NBA, I think around the same time period, or at least close to it. I remember when I was in high school, they had a lockout or at least they had like a shortened season, something like that. I think the Spurs won that year. I don't remember. Anyway, but yeah, I had no idea about the NHL lockout. So.
Well, on one hand, it's like professional athletes make too much money anyway for what they do. But on the other hand, too, you're looking at this case study, and I'm thinking that the NHL are greedy sons of a gun too.
Right. Who are you guys pulling for? Were you for the union or for the NHL going through?
I didn't get that at all. I saw it as they were trying to make it so that there's an even playing field, which promotes a little bit more marketability for the smaller towns. I mean, before the NFL did this. The Dallas Cowboys, God's team, they were dominating because there was no salary cap. But now that they had the salary cap, it's making it, I think, more enjoyable for other people that may not enjoy rooting for the Lord's team.
I was voting for going for the union, but just because I really didn't like the attitude of Bettman, the NHL commissioner. I just really thought that he was playing dirty and underhanded, and I didn't care for his tactics. And so I wanted to give the NHL or the league players what they wanted.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that their requests were unreasonable either.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It seemed like the NHL had the money and they had the power, and they were going to sit on that, and they were going to get their way no matter what. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting case. I kind of was for the union as well, personally. Even though the players do make a ton of money, I just didn't like the strong arm tactics of the NHL in the situation, I guess. But
I think I was more of. Well, I think I actually didn't like both sides just because I don't like unions in period. So like having the union side was just, and plus they're trying to rep for like tons of money anyways. But the problem I saw was just, and now the financial sheets might be incorrect because I saw like they were biased. But if they have if they're reporting net loss for the past like 4 years in a row, something's wrong, right? And that could be like the CEOs in the NHL taking way too much money or whatever, but still, it just seems like, I think I was more on the side of playing hockey, right? Like that should be the main focus of whatever their agreement is, right? If they can't play hockey, then it's no fun. Like I was thinking as a player, right? Like I like the idea as soon as they had like the disagreements, a bunch of players just went to Europe just to play hockey over there, right? Because what's the point of like debating over it, right?
they just love the game, wanted to play.
Yeah. I thought that was more the main point. It's just, that should be the main focus: is play the game.
Yeah, I feel the same way as you about unions. I feel like sometimes they just get in the way of the spirit of competition, and I think that's what was happening here as well.
Yeah. Did you guys put together from the reading of the Speed of Trust book, like how much of that seemed to apply to this situation between the two sides trying to get their way?
Yeah. Well, it was weird. This one, the case study was structured differently with the questions instead of like your traditional case study.
Yeah.
That always throws me off. It seems like it's just a question. more about negotiation tactics than an actual case study.
Yeah, it just seemed like there was a huge lack of trust between the two sides, and you saw that play out. Like how the speed of trust is always like it slows things down and then it's more costly. That was like exactly what happened in this case. Both sides were very distrusting of each other, and both sides thought the other side was only in it for themselves, and so it slowed everything down.
They were both in for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were both. It was a really entrenched.
Well, it talked about too, one of the questions was asking, what was it? Something about, no, maybe I'm thinking something different. Well, when we were talking about the ZOPA and the BATNA, like the different ways to negotiate. The things I was finding online was saying that like the ZOPA, that they shouldn't tell the other side what they're willing to settle for. But I felt like the the union, they did. I mean, because they came out, unexpectedly and said, okay, well, we accept the salary cap, and we, we'll do this and we'll do this. And it was totally unexpected. And I just felt like that was like a goodwill gesture on their part. But the NHL just trashed it. They didn't recognize it for what it was, and they weren't getting their way, so we're going to just say no.
Yeah. So what would have been some of the ways the union could have strengthened their BATNA?
They should have accepted the league's offer in 2005. They should have accepted that original offer instead of declining it and saying, we're not going to take that. And they held out, and then they ended up losing like $1.1 billion in salary anyway. So they would have been better off if they would have accepted the original offer. There wouldn't have been a work stoppage.
Yeah, that's true. Or they should have been willing to renegotiate when they saw a problem after a few years after that too, right?
Not wait so long to renegotiate the contract.
Yeah. Yeah, because the NHL knows there was a problem, and that's what the net loss that they were reporting, right? Because they noticed there was a problem, but they weren't willing to renegotiate until what was it, 2012 and 13 or 2003 was the day.
Well, really, that's what an off season's built for. It's built to recoup your deals. It's ridiculous when you can't get something done within whatever the 6 months to 7 months that the off season is, to figure out a deal. There's plenty of time there to get those things done. I think I put at the end of mine, that's when this work stoppage happened. I think that was kind of the professional sports. I turned to watching college and at the collegiate level, because they're not playing for a paycheck. They're playing for a chance to win something.
Yeah, I thought it would have been beneficial for them to meet throughout the existing contract period instead of waiting until it expired to start talking. Just start meeting every 6 months or something, and just reevaluate. Hey, this is what's working. This is what's not working. We can just, if they had more of an open kind of communication, a little bit more of that trust there, right? So where they could have that open dialogue and meet every 6 months and say, hey, this part of the contract isn't working for us. How is it working out for you guys? And just kind of continually meet instead of having all of that pent up energy and all that pent up, like, I don't even know, like bad feelings towards each other, right? Just building and building and building for 4 or 5 years, whatever it is, until the next contract needs to be renegotiated. You're just going to come in swinging at that point instead of working it out slowly over the course of a couple of years.
Yeah.
Part of the issue too was the NHL, they wouldn't release their financial statements. Everything was like, well, we say we're losing money, but there was no proof behind it. And that's part of why there was so much mistrust, because the players or the union felt like the NHL was not accurately reporting their income and expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that should be an issue. There should be visibility. And that, you know, if they wanted to create trust, between the NHL and the union, those financial records should have been released. I mean, most other businesses, they have to file an annual report, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, not only released, but they should have been accurate too, because when they did release them, the NHL, the union, didn't think it was right.
Even when they brought in that third party, I can't remember if it was somebody from like the SEC, man, and they still didn't believe the numbers that guy came up with.
Because they were paid for by the NHL, right?
Well, no, it says on here that he was a former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah.
To perform an independent audit. The league believed that his former leadership of an independent regulatory body would establish his impartiality and credibility. However, they didn't have warning of this report prior to it being released. You know, they didn't have time to examine it and to question it before it was just released to the public. So, you know, there's got to be some give and take here. And while the commission, the NHL commission, thought they were doing things right, I just didn't feel like they really had any of the players' interests in mind.
Yeah. So let's talk about.
Here's the deal. I have very mixed feelings on what we're talking about here, because on one end, I understand we're analyzing the trust issue, and there's one issue there, but then there's the other one that I keep going back to of if I were the owner of a company and I had an employee come up and say, you need to pay me more money, and I'm telling him, hey, look, I can't afford to, and he goes, well, show me your financial statements to prove to me that you can't. That's none of your business. This is my business. This is an employee that we're talking about. So it goes back to my issue with unions, but you know, I'll put that aside and we'll talk about trust for a second. On the trust side, one of the things that it seemed to me is that there was only one person on each side that were trying to negotiate with each other, and obviously these guys couldn't stand each other. It seemed like things started to move a little bit more when they started to bring in more people to the negotiating table. And maybe I was reading this pretty fast, so if I misread that, let me know. But it seemed like when they brought in, like, for example, Wayne Gretzky on the union side, and then NHL brought in other people, then when they had multiple people in there, that was able to calm the hot bloods, and they actually started making movement. Did you guys get that as well?
Yeah. Well, they brought in mediators.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed more like a personal vendetta, right? It wasn't even about the league anymore. It was about their personal egos at that point.
Well, yeah. You could even say the whole purpose for the union in the first place was because of that, right? I mean, like the NHL in the first place, they should have, been trying to build the trust just initially, right? But because they weren't acting in the players' best interest initially, they had to basically form a union, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why unions started in the first place, right? When unions were first beginning back in the early 1900s, it was a good thing. I mean, the work conditions for people were terrible and their pay was terrible. And so to have people unionize was a good thing. The problem now is that we're 100 years down the road, and it's kind of like the the children of Israel and where they were at. Things were good when everything was in place, but then fast forward to the time when Christ was on the earth, and the Sadducees and the Pharisees had distorted everything, all of the basics. to meet their needs. And you know, that's kind of what's happened to the unions. They've moved away from the pureness of what they were established for.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm looking at, the recent examples that pop into my head to point to your point there is Hostess. Hostess went bankrupt because the bakers union wanted more money, and the company couldn't afford to pay them, and so they had to go bankrupt. And there's a neighbor that I have who's a pilot, and the company he worked for is the pilot for chartered airplanes. And they were purchased by another company that was unionized. So he was not in a union before. They went to another company, and it was weird. He said he really didn't have a choice to be a member of the union. Supposedly you have a choice, but he said either you pay the union fees, or if you're not a member of the union, then you pay an administration fee that is almost the equivalent of union fees. So he said, okay, I might as well pay the union fees. Well, before they were a member of union, he had flexibility of going to his boss and saying, hey, I want this time off. And they'd give it to him, no problem. After the union, he'd go and say, hey, I want this time off. And they're saying, I'm sorry, hands are tied behind our back. You're a member of a union, and you only can do this, this, and this. It just created extra rules and taking money out of their pockets, and they're not getting anything out of it. I don't see the purpose of it.
Yeah. So let's talk about two different ways that we could approach it. If we were the union, what would we do to resolve the situation? And then we'll talk about if we were the NHL, what would we do to resolve the situation? So we'll play union side first. As union representatives, what are we going to do to fix the situation?
Break up the union?
Well, it seems like the priority of the union, right? The priority of the union first would be to play hockey, right? And the second is probably to make it a profitable endeavor, right? I mean, even though they're not like the actual NHL, right? They're still making money. The players are still making money, right? So profit is probably a shared thing between both NHL and the union, as well as playing hockey. So I think if they could agree or, set that base ground level and say, look, it doesn't really matter. I think part of that would be it doesn't necessarily matter how much the salaries are, right? As long as the company's a profitable company, right? And they can play hockey, right? Because they're already being paid way more than the other leagues.
So basically, the issue is, right, between the union and the NHL is the salary cap, right? Isn't that basically at the end of the day, that's the one thing that the hang up is over? Union says no salary cap, NHL says salary cap.
Right.
So Tim, you're saying go for the salary cap as union, just accept it and keep playing hockey. Okay. What else? What do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, so I think
because it has to be profitable.
Well, the union.
Oh yeah, let's.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. Sorry, I have another class meeting they've been trying to put together for days. I think the whole for the union, I think the one thing is to keep playing hockey. You can still do your job and negotiate the business at hand. I kind of agree with Creighton. The union is getting in the way. And they're saying, oh, you need to stop playing, and the players want more money. You need to pay us more, and the owners are saying, no, we're not going to pay you more. I think one thing you can do is at least play hockey, while things are being negotiated on. Don't just, stop everything. I think that's ridiculous. Is we're going to stop everything because we don't agree. No matter what, forward, if you get to the end or you come to an agreement, it's good. If not, you're off season, and then you say, hey, we're until these things happen. So I could be off, but my opinion.
So you're saying accept the short-term contract for the meantime until you can work out the details later, kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, keep whatever it is, whether it's playing hockey, building widgets in a factory, you're negotiating and saying, okay. And I think that shows loyalty, to the owners, we're going to do this. We're going to keep working, but we want to negotiate a contract. We're not going to do a work stoppage, but we want to be able to work these things out. But we still need to negotiate something. We need to put this together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What'd you say, Melanie?
So what they didn't make clear is, it kind of sounded like it was just Bettman and the other guy that were going back and forth. Sorry about the cat. And that it wasn't ever really taken to the general players, right? It didn't say there were any votes on what had previously been offered. So maybe the union needs to take that to the players and say, okay, this is their offer. Let's vote on it so we can get a general consensus of what everybody wants. It did mention that there were players in there that were like, I don't care. I just want to play hockey. If my salary gets cut, it gets cut. Maybe that is the general consensus of all the players. So I think on the union's part, they missed an opportunity to resolve this earlier if they would have taken the vote to the people.
So basically they're claiming that they represent the people, but they have no idea what the people want.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. What do you think, Creighton? As a union rep, how do we fix the situation? Even though you hate the union, dissolve it.
You're muted, Creighton.
So you're asking me to play Satan.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I thought I was really surprised at one point where the union, they actually offered, if I remember correctly, it was like a 24% pay cut. Is that they actually went that deep? That's pretty deep. I can't imagine offering a 24% pay cut. So that shows how deeply they felt about avoiding the salary cap, and which was kind of surprising because really the salary cap was only going to affect the top players. It wouldn't have affected most of them. In the end, they had the only way they were able to move on is by accepting a salary cap. Now, the salary cap ended up being a lot larger than what NHL was originally asking for, but just obviously the NHL felt very, very strongly about that salary cap because it couldn't go anywhere without that.
So you would say just accept the salary cap, negotiate what the cap should be, and move on from that point.
Yeah, push for a higher salary cap, and then go there.
Cool.
Which kind of, guys, quite frankly, I cheated because I was so curious about what happened that I Googled it, and that's what they did. So
it is. Yeah, I was gonna read that, but yeah, that is what ended up happening. All right, so let's do it from the NHL side. If we're the NHL representatives, what do we do to resolve the situation then?
So when I was reading this, I thought, the NHL, I already said I didn't like their attitude and I didn't like the tactics that they used. But in all honesty, they could have fired everyone and hired new players. There's a lot of people out there who want to play hockey. And if you hire all new players, you're going to get them cheap.
Yeah. What would have been a downfall to that?
Well, you're crossing the picket line. And what do they call them? Are they scabs when they cross the picket line?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and anytime, that's not just going to affect the players' union. It's going to affect every union across the country.
How about public perception? Is that gonna, like the fans, for example? What's that gonna do to the fans?
Well, who is your typical hockey fan, right? Probably a working male. If you look in the region that the hockey teams are situated in, there's a lot of blue-collar workers. Mm-hmm. And they all belong to the unions too, right? So they're not going to be happy with it. They would probably end up boycotting hockey because they weren't happy with the union dealings. And I'm not saying that that's what the NHL should have done. It was just something that crossed my mind as I was reading this, that they could have done it.
As an option, yeah. Yeah, it also would have just destroyed some of their base following. I mean, if you think about like a major sport not having its top name players, there's going to be a lot of people that just don't watch because some of the big name NBA stars or NFL stars or whatever, if they weren't playing, there's a lot of people that simply wouldn't watch anymore, I think.
So as far as what the NHL should have done, is they needed to make more concessions. The NHL came, or the players came in and offered that 24% salary rollback, and like Creighton mentioned, that was incredible, unexpected, and they really laid their cards out on the table, and they just were not receptive to anything other than what they wanted. Part of negotiation is everybody's giving a little to reach an agreement, and they weren't willing to give anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were able to give. They were flexible on the salary cap. I mean, the salary cap has become very standard in all sports associations. Is there a major sports association that does not have a salary cap now? NFL does. I know the baseball does. I don't know anything much about NBA. Does NBA have a salary cap?
I'm sure they do.
I'm not really sure, but isn't it more competitive to have a salary cap? Because then basically what it is each team can only spend that much on salaries, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that would be more competitive, right? Because then big teams can't necessarily spend more to hire better players, right? Everybody has the same salary.
Right.
Yep.
But on the other hand, the salary cap, that's going to apply to every team across the board. It doesn't matter how high the salary cap is. Every team will be under that salary cap. So the best team is still going to be limited by that, and the worst team is going to be limited by it. So I'm not sure how that is really going to introduce, or is it that they didn't have a salary cap at all previously?
Yeah, they didn't have one at all.
I was just saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying it seems like it's a competitive. It makes the sport more competitive, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it goes back to the NFL. The Cowboys were dominating because Jerry Jones was able to spend this gobs of money to get the best players. Ever since that salary cap, it's just it's been a struggle for them, and we've seen some teams that have never been able to really compete before, really come up and do a lot better. So it's made it more exciting.
Yeah,
and more profitable for the NFL.
Yeah,
more profitable because more people watch because it's more exciting.
Yeah, I think that, and then like for example, you take some of the worst teams where people weren't showing up to the games because they knew their teams were terrible, but now they actually have a competitive edge because of that salary cap, and so more people are showing up there. So it kind of helped. It hurt Dallas Cowboys a little bit, but every other team was doing a lot better.
Yeah. I don't know. It just kind of bugs me a little bit because then you're picking and choosing who wins and loses as an organization instead of like, I don't know. It almost feels like you're picking and choosing the winning team or losing teams. Kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
By having a salary cap.
By having a salary cap, yeah. I mean, if the Cowboys because the Cowboys, or you think of the Yankees, right, or somebody like that. Those are two of the teams you think of because beforehand they didn't have a salary cap, and these teams just dominated. And then by putting the salary cap there, you're basically telling those teams you're not going to win anymore, or at least not as often. I don't know.
Everybody's a winner now.
Yeah, everybody has an equal chance to win. I don't know. It just kind of bugs me a little bit.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, if you're a baseball player, right, and you get paid $1 million for this team and only $100,000, right, do the same game, right? Which one are you going to pick? Obviously, you're going to pick the higher paying salary, right?
Which is why the Yankees always won. That's
yeah. I guess Major League Baseball salary cap must be pretty liberal compared to the others, because I remember reading that like the top 5 players of the Yankees team is the entire salary for like the Florida Marlins. It's pretty uneven.
It is.
Well, but it's up to the team to decide how they're going to administer that salary cap. So if the Yankees choose to give 75% of that salary cap to the top 5 players, then that's how it is.
Yeah, but I think, like, for example, in baseball, the Florida Marlins, that salary cap is so high that the Florida Marlins don't touch it. In the NFL, I believe most of the NFL hits the salary cap, and so it's much more stringent, and therefore makes it more of an even playing field.
Yeah, my thing is just kind of like if I were to apply it to business per se, like if you think of like, okay, Google, Bing, and Yahoo for search engines, and you're like, okay, Google, here's your salary cap, right? And here's how much you're able to spend and stuff like that, and then you're basically saying like Google, you're no longer going to dominate the search engine field. Yahoo and Bing, you're going to come up here and it's going to be pretty much even. Why? Why is that okay? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's different with a business though, and just a competitive sport, because sports just essentially entertainment. Doesn't matter who wins or loses.
It's a business for them though.
It's a business.
But when a business,
but NFL is enforcing this on themselves. This is not the government coming and enforcing this on them, right? So NFL is creating these regulations within their own organization in order to generate more competition.
Kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're going against like another organization, be it the unions. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's just theory.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think the salary cap is necessarily a bad thing, right? But I mean, when you're talking millions of dollars, when you get up that high, it's really nickels and dimes, right? What's the difference between 1 million or 5 million? Really, because every team is going to be under that same cap. So, they got it. And
well, I guess looking.
You mentioned that it was made it more profitable. Was that you, Creighton? That in the end, a salary cap makes things more profitable.
Right.
So they have wiggle room. They may not have that or think that they can hit that salary cap, pay for it right now. But if you take into account, you roll back you take that offer and roll back everybody's salaries by 24%, and then set a higher salary cap, it gives them several years where they can recover their losses and build it up so that they can, so it gives the players an opportunity to perhaps make a little more money.
Yeah, bringing it back to the case to the NHL, it seems like their priority should be, making a profit, because if you looking at their financial sheets, I assume that they were correct, right, and accurate. Like if they were taking a loss for the past 4 years, it just says that their company right now isn't successful, right? So they would need to, look at the salaries and really set a realistic goal with the union. And I think, obviously, the goal should be to play hockey, right? If the union and the NHL could agree on that, and then I think that'd be the ideal. And so, coming from the side of the NHL, right? How do they do that? Like, how do they establish that? Yes, they're taking a loss and profit's priority, as well as like keeping the. So, like, the first priority, I guess, for the NHL would be to establish trust, and that comes with their financial statements. If the union doesn't trust that they have accurate financial statements, they need to do everything possible to be transparent in their company and and show that, look, we're not making a profit, guys. I know you like playing hockey, but we can't play hockey if we're not making money off of it, right? I mean, I think that should be like a simple thing to do. So,
well, and maybe they do a graduated salary cap, right? So the NHL wants $49 million, or the league wants $49 million, but the NHL is only willing to offer 44. Maybe that's all they feel like they can financially do this year. So then you say, in 3 years, we'll add more to the salary cap. I mean, they do that all the time in negotiating wages, right? They put a wage increase. It's written into the contract.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then everybody, I mean, they're not going to have that high salary cap initially, but it'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what is the main takeaway that you guys got from this case? What's the one thing that kind of stood out to you that maybe you'll do differently in your negotiating tactics or something?
Got to be more willing to listen.
For me, it was the negotiation tactics, the BATNA and the ZOPA, right? Is just understanding that how those work, right? Understanding what's the lowest point you can go, like the worst case scenario kind of a thing, and then understanding what's going to be the other side's worst and best case scenario.
Okay, cool. Melanie, what do you have?
Listening to each other. And, you know, I didn't feel like either one was really listening to each other. They just had their own goal in mind, and you can't do that. I mean, you got to be able to communicate, and, you know, that's more of the 5 functions of a team, right? The conflict they were having was not healthy conflict because nobody was listening.
Right. Cool. How about you, Craig? Main takeaway?
Yeah, I guess my main takeaway was it just seemed like it took them a long time to realize that they were spinning their wheels between these 2 main negotiators, and it seems like they should have, you know, gotten more people involved a lot earlier than they did to be able to come to a final conclusion.
Yeah, I think my main takeaway was kind of the idea of being vulnerable, even though it's super difficult to do. Like you almost have to take that initial hit, or to come in kind of humble, vulnerable, open up, and just say, hey, here's who I am, here's what we're trying to do, and see if you can make any kind of personal connection with the other person and work on the relationship possibly and move forward. I don't know. It just seems like they were both very my way or the highway. You're really just not going to get anywhere with that attitude. So.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like even from the beginning, they were just like, we're going to win this, right? On both sides, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They weren't so much in finding the solution. They were just like, our side is going to win this. It's going to be this way, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, I almost, as an aside note, I almost wonder, because we see this so often in the sports industry, I wonder if a part of it is the fact that the sports industry tends to attract people that are intensely competitive and have that attitude of not compromise, but of domination.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Can you say it one more time?
Oh, I was just wondering if maybe one of the reasons we see this happen so often in the sports industry is that the sports industry attracts the people that are intensely competitive and have that mentality of domination and winning and not of compromise.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. Well, look too at the speed of trust, right? One of the things that they talked about was a win-win situation, right? So basically, it seems like you could still have that competitive advantage and say, yeah, I'm going to win, but I'm also going to look for a win for both teams, right? Or it's not like both sides, like Jason was pointing out, right? The speed of trust, you know, if you go in thinking that a win for me is going to be a lose for them and vice versa kind of a thing, I think that's the wrong attitude to look at it. You have to go in win-win situation, right?
Right. And can you imagine, though, I mean, you know, going back to my previous point, if you were to go take your sports teams and, guys, I want you to read the speed of trust. We need to learn how to compromise with the other team. Look for that win-win.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, like in football, it's not a win, right?
Right.
Only one side.
They may not know how to read a book.
How to read a book.
Yeah, just kidding.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart players, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'll read to you guys basically what actually panned out with this case. So it says, on July 21st, the Players Association ratified the agreement with 87% of its members voting in favor. The owners unanimously approved it the next day, officially ending the 310-day lockout. The salary cap would be adjusted each year to guarantee players 54% of total NHL revenues, and there would also be a salary floor. Player contracts are also guaranteed. The players' share will increase if revenues rise to specific benchmarks, while revenue sharing will split a pool of money from the 10 highest grossing teams among the bottom 15. There was a $39 million cap in place for the first year of the CBA. So that's kind of the contract portion of it. And then it says the lockout did help franchises better manage their finances and increase their value, combined with finally receiving a stable national TV rights deal in the United States with NBC and Versus, and the launch of NHL Network. 26 of 30 NHL franchises saw an increase in value since before the lockout. Leading the way would be the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team cited even before the lockout to benefit from a lockout due to financial problems related to the former team owner, Howard Baldwin. So yeah, basically overall the teams were more financially stable. The value of each of the teams went up. As far as the contract, I ended up with a salary cap. It ended up being a little bit lower than what the original offer was. Had they accepted it sooner, they would have done better as far as the salary cap goes. And
I have a question.
What did the salary cap end up as? What was the number that it ended up at?
$39 million.
Okay, and yeah, because they wanted 49, right?
Yeah, so, yeah. I think the union wanted 49 or 51 or something. 51, I think, was their first number. Something like that.
So I have a question about
That's quite a big drop.
About the end deal.
Uh-huh.
So it said that the salary cap would be adjusted annually based on 54% of the NHL's revenues. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
So theoretically, the salary cap could go down if they have a bad year, right?
Yeah, it could go down, right?
Okay.
Or up if they have a good year.
Right, or up if they have a good year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to know if I was just thinking about.
So I think that was the one thing that the union said they wanted if they were going to do a union cap or a salary cap. I think that was in the case study. They said if they were going to do it, that they would want it tied to revenue, something like that. So I think that was the only part of the contract that the union got that they wanted. The rest of it was all NHL demands.
That's still a lot lower than because if I remember correctly, that before that negotiation, wasn't 75% of the revenue going towards player salaries? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
75%.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's right. Do you have
Which
the case?
was
Yeah, the exact
other than the other sports industries.
Huh. I didn't remember that number, but that is like really crazy high.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
The other thing that the NHL got was that tax that they wanted, right? On the highest grossing, the 10 highest grossing teams were then
Right.
taxed, and that money would then be dispersed among the bottom 15 teams. So they also got that in the contract.
Well, that's not a bad thing either, though. Not necessarily. It is for the higher teams, but I mean the lower teams sometimes need that cash infusion to keep operating. Because just because there's a salary cap doesn't mean that the team is profitable. And that they could afford to pay up to the salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I know more about hockey now than I did before.
Right?
Yeah, me too.
Hey guys, I'm sorry. I have a question that's not related, so I'll hold off.
That's all I've got. So I just wanted to give you what actually happened. That's it for the case. So,
All right.
should I end the recording, or is there anything else that we want to?
Do you want your next
you've
question
got
to be
the
recorded, Creighton, or you want me to?
No. Next question does not need to be recorded. It can be.
Okay, I'll stop it then.